The crowd of loved ones, family, friends, everyone that really cared slowly started walking into the patient's room, and they all gathered around, but they weren't all alive. This is actually a true story, and I remember this patient who was nonverbal, end stage, getting ready to go over to the other side, and he completely became lucid and began talking to his family. He wanted to have a family meeting. And I know when I arrived at the facility, the family came up to me and said, "You're not going to believe what's going on. Our dad's awake and he's talking to us." And they were full of joy. There was tears in their eyes. I've never seen them so happy. And I was shocked because I walked in the patient's room and there he is sitting up in bed, verbal, having a family meeting. But they weren't all alive. So the family does tell me that he's talking to, I'll call her Aunt Mary. He's talking to a relative in the room as he's talking to his living daughter, his living son, his grandchildren were there. But he's also talking to Aunt Mary, and everyone's looking around because Aunt Mary died. But the patient can see Aunt Mary and is talking to her just as I'm talking to you, or he was talking to his loved family members. And the end result of that is what I feel is the joy, the relief. The family was so happy to have that one more moment with dad. And I know on a popular video of mine, a lot of people in healthcare was like, how do you not know about the last wind or the eternal awakening or the last light? There's like all these terms for it. Okay, well, let me say, in nursing school and in medical school, that was never mentioned once. And I don't think I was ever absent. Maybe once. I don't know. I don't think I was ever absent. I was too afraid of not passing school. And so what is that? What is that? When you see it, like there was another story I had of when I was a brand new nurse. And of course, the nurses didn't tell me about it. I wasn't trained in it, and I hadn't worked in hospice yet. And I had a patient who was bed-bound, nonverbal. The next thing I look, he's up walking around in his room. And I was shocked as a new nurse. I did not know this. So I appreciate all of you who have commented and said, how do you not know that? Well, how do you not know how to fix a car if you never learned how to be a mechanic? I mean, some things you just don't know. We're not told everything in nursing school and medical school, by the way. We learn a lot on the job. So back to this family that was able to have their dad back. Now, I can't remember for how long he remained lucid because I didn't stay the whole day. But it was just the result of they were so glad to just have that one more moment to talk with their dad. I know this doesn't happen all the time when people are dying, but it's reported, at least on my website, with all the comments I've had of people reporting their loved ones seeing their dead animals, relatives, friends coming into the room. They're coming, and then we know they're close to death. So there is a term for this, getting to my notes here, in hospice, and I'm going to get to the new coin that I'm going to term for this, because this is actually a recognized condition that we see in hospice when patients see deceased or dead relatives or friends at the end of life. And so they're called ELDVs, or end-of-life dreams and visions. This is when in hospice it's commonly recognized, and I call it, here's another term I say, it's one of death's vital signs, just like blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen status. Seeing dead relatives, friends, animals, it is a vital sign of like, oh, we've reached another phase of the dying process. So this typically occurs hours, days, or weeks before death. It increases in frequency as death nears. This is the official definition I'm reading here. Usually patients have vivid dreams or waking visions experienced by terminally ill patients. Studies indicate 50 to 90% of hospice patients report these ELDVs when asked, with up to 88 experiencing at least one such event. So, okay, there's greater than 10% that never have this at all. And we've talked about this, and I'm sorry, those people that comment on my page and they say, well, I didn't have that, or my relative didn't have that. Yeah, it doesn't always happen. My problem with calling these ELDVs is it to me, it's a little insulting to the patient and to the family members. How do we know? Okay, waking visions, to me, that implies that the patient is hallucinating, that it's a drug side effect, that they're just kind of having this weird waking vision that none of us can see. Yet, as nurses and doctors, we see it all the time in the patient's room. And so I want to coin a new term. So this is the first time on this channel, and then I'm going to be referring to it, this term, in the future. ESE. And I'm calling it Eternal Sync Encounter. ESE. So what I've witnessed and what I believe, because I've seen this countless times, I walk in the patient's room, they're seeing dead relatives in the room. And then soon after, I know we're close. So I say, hey, if you have any family out of town, call them in. And so what is this? It's a soul sync phenomenon, this eternal sync encounter. So these are fated cosmic alignments between the dying soul and deceased spirits, their loved ones, the people that meant most to them, family, friends, pets. And I think that the universal consciousness or God or whoever it is that you subscribe to, Jesus, and etc., right? I think that they give a gift to dying people to be able to see the people that meant something to them in their life. And it doesn't always have to be a positive person. Like someone could say, oh my gosh, my mother was so controlling. I cannot believe she came to me. Yeah, because your mother did love you and she has realized her mistakes on the other side, right? So you have a sync with these person. There is a soul sync phenomenon that happens. And so it's like a gift to the dying patient to not be afraid that, oh my gosh, my friend and my family, they're coming for me. I want to go with them. They're no longer afraid. They become happy. They become lighter, you know? And so I think it's a better term, eternal sync encounter, when patients are dying and start to see their dead loved ones, friends and family. It's not, okay, so is it a waking vision? Yes, to someone that is skeptical and doesn't really believe that the patient is seeing their dead friends and family. What if it's a real eternal sync encounter? This soul sync phenomenon, God giving them a gift of, I'm going to lift this veil and you're going to start to see your relatives walk in the room, the living ones and the dead ones together. So I don't know. I think a better term is ESE, eternal sync encounter. And I'm going to start using that with my patients and I will define it. So, and I think there was a reference to, it's like an eternal nod to the soul's immortality and biblical eternity. This was actually out of Ecclesiastes 3:11, if you're familiar with that. And I think that kind of syncs up with that as well. So there have been thousands of reports of patients seeing dead relatives and friends walk in the room or having the gift of the veil lifted a week or days, hours before death. And I have to say, one of the most famous phrases or quotes was when Steve Jobs, who had his family in the room, and while he was dying, I think one of his last words were, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow." That's what he was saying. Now, if that guy wasn't into, science and tech, and at the end of his life, the famous quote of saying, "Oh, wow." Just before he died, he was just seeing the other side. I just love that one. But okay. We have Dr. Christopher Kerr that actually did research into this. And he came out with a book in 2020 called Death is But a Dream. And he recounts the case of a patient named Mary, a 78-year-old woman with terminal cancer. And in her final days, she vividly described her deceased husband and son, who were in her room while she was in hospice. And they were smiling and beckoning her to come with them. And she spoke to them saying, "I'm coming soon." The nurses that witnessed this, and there was multiple nurses, said she all of a sudden appeared very calm and comforted. And the nurses saw her talking to these unseen figures in the room that they couldn't see, but she could see. And they did say she was at more peace than ever before. So this case was documented in a 2014 study by Dr. Kerr's team at the Center for Hospice and Palliative Care in Buffalo. And so now we have the historical case of Sir William Barrett's research. Now, this goes back to 1926. In Deathbed Visions, physicist Sir William Barrett documented a case from the late 19th century involving a woman who was dying in the hospital, and on her deathbed, she suddenly sat up and smiled. This is exactly what my patient did when his family walked in the room. Just someone who was completely unresponsive, all of a sudden sits up in bed, right? Yeah. And I know some of you are going to comment like, don't you know that's end of life like energy? Like, okay, it's still very miraculous when they're seeing people on the other side also, is it not? And anyway, so she suddenly sits up in bed and said, oh, there's my sister. There she is. And of course, her sister was deceased. She died weeks earlier in another city. The woman described her sister standing at the foot of her bed, accompanied by other figures in the room. So we have the doctor, the nurses that were alive, and then we have the dead people in the room at the same time. So we're just having a party there, right? But they also said shortly after the patient was all of a sudden calm and joyful, right? Doesn't it sound like a gift lifting that veil so the dying patient can have comfort no matter what the staff is doing or giving them, right? So this is a very famous case, and it's also cited in the studies that came out in 1977 called At the Hour of Death. So what do you think about that? Right? I'm going to, from here on out, I'm going to use that term, ESE, Eternal Sync Encounters. That is what our patients are having at the end of life. Okay, so pass it on, pass it along, or give me your comments, what you think about that. Okay, everybody, thanks for being here. I'll see you on the next one.